Episode 307, My Battle with Anxiety and Depression.
It's the davidTrig Show. This is the podcast where you can get spiritual power and personal development for everyday life. It's GOZO for the whole family, Jamba Juice for the soul, your daily dose of GOZO.
Well, look at everybody and welcome back to the daily, is this still daily? Trig Podcast of Joy. On this amazing Thursday, October 4th, I'm here surrounded by my GOZO bell, my GOZO mug, my GOZO coffee. Let's see how today's coffee of the day is tasting. Let's see. Oh man, that is some good hot Java on this beautiful day. Welcome back. My name is davidTrig, and I am here as your GOZO man, your daily source of GOZO, Jamba Juice for the soul, viviendo la vida GOZO. And even though today's title may seem like a downer, I call this my battle with anxiety and depression. And I do want to obviously talk about what I mean. One thing that I've learned is that no matter how I'm feeling, that joy does come in the morning, right, GOZO Nation? I mean, otherwise, this whole thing about joy, GOZO, by the way, means joy in Spanish, it's just a bunch of noise, right? I mean, is the joy of the Lord really my strength? Well, that is definitely, it definitely comes to a test, or that idea definitely is tested during times of anxiety and depression. So let me first set the stage, tell you a few things before I get started. First of all, the reason why I'm sharing some of these things with you is, as always, is to first, just to be honest about my own process. Second is to model for you the tools that I am using to work through anxiety, depression, and some of those things. And then third is to be a kind of leader or a man of God who is not afraid to be weak or to come across as weak to others, because I have realized that in my weakness, I am strong in Christ, and that I've really come to understand that weakness is hiding your vulnerabilities. The actual weakness is to hide or to mask what's really happening in your soul, and that true deliverance and all of our dreams and our victory only comes when we are honest. And this is my way of being honest. I feel very privileged and thankful and honored that you are here as my listener, as a member of this beautiful GOZO community. So I thank you for your support. And this is my platform. I don't have I'm not a global brand, or I don't have a big store down the street where you can buy my book or anything. I have this podcast, and so this is what I use to get my message out. And so thank you for your listening ears, for your time. I think maybe the last thing I'll say is this is not prescriptive. In other words, I am not a doctor. I'm not a therapist. I don't play one on TV. Well, maybe sometimes I do. But more than anything, I am just someone who wants to, as I said, just be an example of the ups and downs of being me. And maybe you can relate to some of the things that I've been through. But these are not medical tips, nor are they psychological. This is not psychological treatment. I do have a certificate in mental health, so I do have training in that. But again, I'm not a therapist. So if you feel like you need more than just a podcast to get through your own anxiety, depression, or any other kind of mental health situation, of course, as always, make sure that you see a licensed therapist. So with that said, let me just start with kind of, I guess, a little bit of what I'm talking about in the background to all this. I'm going to land, just so you know where I'm going here, I'm going to land on 1 Kings 19 in the story of Elijah, because that story really resonates with me, because he also went through a time of anxiety and depression which you may not know about, but even the prophet of God and even men and women of God go through these things. And so how much more will we go through these things? So as far as background, as many of you know, I'm a pastor, I'm a musician, I'm a coach, you could say, here online through this podcast. The last episode that I recorded, which was 306, if you want to go back to that and listen to it, I mentioned that I was taking a week off, a break from the podcast. And it's actually been more like 3 weeks. Just thinking back, I think I took the break sometime in mid-September, something like that. And even recording today, I must say, I'm a bit surprised because I honestly thought just even yesterday that I may never record another episode. And that's all part of my anxiety and just where I've been. So this is kind of my first attempt, I would say, in 3 weeks at even being able to process what I've been feeling. Second, I want to say that I am not through it. I am not speaking post-depression or anxiety. I'm actually in the middle of it. Maybe you could say that I am, let's say if, I don't know, this weekend was maybe the worst. Maybe today, Thursday, Friday, this weekend, maybe I'm at, instead of being at a plus 10, maybe I'm at a plus 6. So it's I would say my anxiety and depression has come down just the last week or so. So that's why I even felt the energy to actually speak into this microphone. So let me get into kind of, I guess, a little bit of the history of what brought this upon me. First, I want to say that this is not the first time I've been through a season like this. I remember at least back in 2011, I believe, 2010, something like that. So about 7 years ago, maybe 6, I went through a very similar experience. And so here I am again. And this is just part of the history and the journey that some of us go through. And so I would say this started 2 years ago when I began to work really hard at my current job, the church that I love. And I basically came in as a superhero, trying to do it all, mostly on my own, I guess. And I would say that there were a lot of great moments. There have also been some very challenging moments along the way these last 2 years. And I'm not going to go into details. It's really not the point of this episode. I just want to paint a broad picture, maybe that you can relate to. But so it's been exhausting in mostly, I would say, in a very exciting and exhilarating way. As you know, I love psychology, and so I study the Myers-Briggs a lot and the Enneagram and some of these other tests that are out there. But when it comes to the Enneagram, and especially the Enneagram, you can check that out at enneagraminstitute.com. I am an Enneagram 3, type 3, wing 4, I believe. I'm not totally sure, or maybe a wing 2. And if this makes very little sense, as I've said before, check out enneagraminstitute.com and you can learn more about that. Or there's a great book by Richard Rohr called Christ and the Enneagram, which is a wonderful kind of a Christ-based study of this same test. And so the Enneagram 3, the type 3, is the achiever, the doer, the high achiever. And this has been true of me since I was 5. I've always gotten straight A's, won awards, been the best in my class, always been the highest in everything that I do. Everything I touch turns to gold, quote unquote. I learned the piano on my own. I learned how to sing on my own, play the guitar on my own. Just a high achiever. I know how to code and build websites and write songs. And now I'm making beats, hip hop beats. I taught myself through YouTube videos. You know, I got into the best shape of my life in my late 30s, where most people are kind of done with working out. I got into it, and I basically became a amateur natural bodybuilder in my mind. The point is that I've always achieved at a high pace, and I've always taken pride in that? I would say mostly it's been a pursuit of the fear behind that achievement, which is the fear of failure, the fear of not being worthy. And so if you know about the Enneagram, I won't bore you with all of it, but the Enneagram, the types 2, 3, and 4 are the heart/shame types. So our biggest phobia, you could call it, is shame, is worthlessness. But the way that we present in the world, or the way that we show up in the world, is through our heart. And the 3 is the center of the 2, 3, 4 triad. So I'm at the center of the heart triad. So I lead with my heart. I love people. I love music. I love Jesus. I love my wife. I love life. I love love. You could say of me that I'm one of those persons that is in love with love. And of course, I love that about myself, speaking of love, because when I play my music, when I preach, when I mentor someone, when I do these podcasts, etc., I am all there. I'm all in, and I love that. The problem, of course, is that when the success isn't there or the admiration isn't there, then I go into my failure mode, which then produces anxiety and depression. So that's a little bit of the background there. And that's kind of where I am, because all of my hard work and prayer and preaching and ideas and projects haven't produced the external results, then I have become depressed and anxious and fearing that I'm a failure. And I guess one more thing I'll say about the 3 type is that for the type 3, success, and you could want me to have God be my success, or I could hear messages or verses on how Jesus is my success. That's all good and true. But in just my humanity, for me, success is external results, is my body being in the best shape of my life, is my grades, is having 2 PhDs, not, just a master's degree that I'm still working on. And that it's taken me 20 years instead of 3 or 2. So when I begin to think of success, because this way God made me, I am fearfully and wonderfully made in this way. You might be built differently. You probably are. There are different types of people in this world. But for me, as a type 3, INFJ, etc., success is measured. I wish it was just by I'm loved by God, but it's truly measured by the external results, by what I see on the outside, meaning, as I said, my body, the success of my church, how awesome my family is, how perfect of a husband I am. And I'm not a perfectionist, but I am someone who seeks affirmation through my successes. And so then my success is not even the reward in it of itself. So this is a little more now stuff into the 3. But really what I really want is admiration, affirmation. It's really what it comes down to. It's not even wanting money. People accuse me that I want money. You need to know. I mean, it's not about money for me. It never has been, never will. So stop accusing me of that. It's not the truth. If you're really going to accuse me of something, accuse me of looking and wanting admiration. That is true. Wanting affirmation. Wanting for people to say to me that I'm doing great or that I did something awesome. So words of affirmation, if you're into love languages, that is my number 1 language. So anyway, I don't want to bore you with me, but I hope these things, if you are a 3 and if you are like me, you can say, oh my goodness, I'm just like him. Now, if you're not like me, then don't judge me. Don't say, oh, this or that. Instead, as I said, what I recommend is look into these things yourself so that you can learn kind of what motivates your actions and maybe your ups and downs. So just to disclaim that. But so because of all those things, when my church in this case, and as well as my body, as well as my education, it's really the 3 things that get in there, as well as my marriage and my home life, and really everything gets on the list. But when there is no external success that I can count, that I can see tangibly, and the admiration that goes with that, meaning, oh, wow, look at what he did. He took his church from 50 to 500 in 2 years. I mean, that's the kind of stuff that fills my cup and, floats my boat. I mean, man, all the way. So when that's not there, then anxiety, failure, depression, self-worth, all that, I tank in those areas. And so therefore, that's where I am. And because I don't have the external successes, my church hasn't gone from 50 to 500. It's been the opposite, I feel sometimes. And even though I have perspective and God is teaching me a lot of things, as I said, I want to just walk you through the process. So because of that, and even this year has been probably the hardest, maybe one of the hardest of my life, maybe only second to other things, but maybe it's been definitely the top 3 most challenging years of my life. Because of that, I'm dealing with some of these things. And it finally came to a head about 4 weeks ago when I injured myself, and I thought it was prostate cancer. I was just freaking out about, that's what anxiety does. It just begins to tell you all these horrible things. I'm fine. I don't have anything. But I felt pain in my lower abdomen, and I won't bore you with the details, TMI again, but all that to say that anxiety always needs a trigger. There's always an event or a word or a person that kind of gets you into that bad place. And so for me, usually it's my health. It's something in my symptoms, or when someone says something negative, especially someone in power or authority, someone that I respect. Those things really put me in a bad place. So with all of the events of this year, plus the symptoms that took place over the last month, then that's when I finally hit bottom. And so these last 4 weeks, that's where I've been. So now, through all of that, what are some of the things that I am learning, or what are some of the things that have helped me? First of all, there was this analogy that I heard from my friend Cliff on his podcast, or on his, I guess it was on his vlog. And in his blog, he was talking about his own, I guess, just not depression, but his own processing of his online business. He has an online business. And he gave an analogy that really helped me, and I want to just share it with you briefly. He was walking around his neighborhood, and everyone in his neighborhood, I think he lives in Kentucky, has beautiful green grass. It's one of those neighborhoods where every house is just beautiful. It's brand new, maybe 5 years old, and therefore the lawn is just immaculate, right? Beautiful, green, just manicured, all that stuff. Well, he, for some reason, had a problem with his lawn. And he was trying all kinds of things, but it just didn't look right. Finally, he called kind of a garden or a grass expert, and this person said to him, "You need to kill the grass and start from scratch." And my friend Cliff was saying, "I don't want to do that. I mean, it's going to look horrible. I just want to do a few things. Can you give me maybe some tips, or can you just fix it?" And the guy said, "Well, we can try." And I think they tried it. But long story short, he had to kill the grass. And so when he was walking around doing this vlog, he actually showed us a picture of his house, of his grass, and it looked terrible. I mean, it was just brown and dry and dead. I mean, just like dead grass. And all of the houses around him were just perfect. And so you could just imagine him thinking, wow, I'm so embarrassed. I'm ashamed. People are criticizing me. I can't believe I failed at this. But this expert told him that he had to kill the grass so that it would come back stronger, that he could actually then go in and put the nice dirt in and kind of work the earth and put all the right nutrients in there and turn the earth over. And I'm not a garden expert, but all the things that need to happen for that lawn to be ready for the seed. And so they did that. And then the grass isn't in yet, but the expert told him that next summer, I think, so not this year, but next summer of 2019, he will then have a perfect green lawn. And my friend Cliff was saying how that wasn't exactly what he wanted to hear. He wanted green grass right away, but he knew that he had to kill the grass, do the right thing, and then wait. And then he would have the perfect lawn. And as you can imagine, that really, really helped me, just because I feel like the last 2 years for me have been all about trying to just make this grass just beautiful. And nothing seems to work. If anything, it's like, man, what's going on? Like things are dying. And I feel like finally this summer, we finally killed the grass. God had to basically remove a lot of our hopes and dreams. And that's really been very difficult for me, because I also feel like people are criticizing me, or it's my fault, or I should have done this. And partly I'm sure it was my fault, and partly was just things have to die for them to be born again. And then of course the waiting, right? I mean, that's been another hard thing, is I don't want to wait another year or even another month. I want that grass or my community to be amazing right now, because what are people going to think? And yet I've realized that the expert of, meaning in this case, the Holy Spirit, the expert, God, the expert, is telling me, David, this had to die. You had to let this go. You can't just keep trying to revive something that's just dead. The things have to die. And guess what? You have to die to your own achieving and wanting to be the magician and the one who everything you touch turns to gold. You have to die to all of your efforts and let me be the expert to come in and revive this place when I want to, not when you want to, but in my timing, meaning next summer 2019 or whatever that may look like. I actually feel like it's going to be more like, I don't know, summer of 2021. But anyway, that's another story. So that analogy and that example of my friend Cliff really helped me to kind of just wait. And then, as I mentioned, this story of Elijah really helped me. And I want to read that now, because Elijah also had an amazing experience. He had killed basically a bunch of anti-God prophets, false prophets, and he had an amazing victory. God had done great things for him. And then after a great victory comes usually a test, right? And so in 1 Kings 19, in verse 1, it says, Ahab, who was the prophet, told Jezebel, actually Ahab was a king, told Jezebel is a demon basically. It was a false prophet, a woman who was anti-God. And so then in verse 1, it says, Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done and how he had killed all the prophets with a sword. So that's the amazing things Ahab had done. And that's how I feel. I feel like in the past, I have done amazing things. God has always blessed me. He's always been with me. So I also came into my current situation just thinking, man, God has done amazing things. He's going to continue to do great things, right? Well, look at what happens in verse 2. Then Jezebel, again, she's a demon, basically Satan, sent a messenger to Elijah. Elijah is the prophet of God, saying, so may the gods do to me and more also if I do not make your life a living hell, basically. And so she sends the man of God a threat, basically saying, I'm coming after you to kill you. And that's exactly how this has felt. I mean, I have felt like these few years, it's been all about just attacks and people and circumstances making me feel like we're going to die, and that those messages have been very, very strong. And so here's what happens. So in verse 3, then Elijah, here's his response. He was afraid. He was afraid, and he arose, ran for his life, came to Beersheba, which belongs to Judah, and left his servant there. But he himself went a day's journey into the wilderness and came and sat down under a broom tree, and he asked that he might die, saying, it is enough. Now, O Lord, take my life, for I am no better than my fathers. So his response to these attacks is not one of strength or of wanting, trusting God. Instead, he gets depressed. He wants to die. He literally is wishing to die. And he says, I'm no good. So now he's dealing with issues of failure, issues of shame, issues of even looking at his past and saying, I'm nothing. Even though God had just done amazing things, but this is what depression does. It just clouds your thinking. And then these lies get in there and you then want to die. And for me, I never wanted to die, but for me, that issue of failure was very, very strong. Just shame and failure and blame. And then I would say for me, that my acting out really becomes twofold. It's either a deep sense of failure or a deep hyperactivity. So I want to do a million things, which then only make things worse because it just isn't meant to be. So then, verse 5, and he lay down and slept under a broom tree, and behold, an angel touched him and said to him, arise and eat. And he looked, and behold, there was at his head a cake baked on hot stones and a jar of water. He ate, drank, lay down. Second time, the angel said the same thing, eat some more, for the journey is too great for you. That's very key. Then he arose, ate, drank, and went in the strength for that food 40 days and 40 nights to Horeb, the mount of God. So basically, the angel comes and he ministers to Elijah. And this is very important, instead of him saying, come on, Elijah, God is your strength, what's wrong with you, get going. Instead, he actually gives him food and sleep and rest. So he ministers to his body, to his physical body, to his needs. My guess is Elijah hadn't slept in months. He hadn't eaten well. And that's exactly how I have felt. Like my sleeping is off and my working out and my eating is a mess. And sometimes God, that's what he wants to do, is to actually just tend to your body, to your rest. It's not all about just pray more and go to church more and trust more. Yes, yes, yes. But sometimes it's also about our physical wellness and what now people call self-care and all that. And what I like most about this is that he tells Elijah to eat twice because he says the journey ahead of you is too great for you. So he paints a picture, the angel paints a picture of the future. He says, Elijah, you have a future, but you can't do the future the way you've been doing the past. And that is very powerful. It's been powerful for me to hear. God has been telling me the same thing. He's saying, David, you can't go into 2019, 2020, and the rest of these years with the same plan of yesteryear. You can't just keep going on your own. You can't just keep going wanting to be amazing or making it all about you or disregarding maybe even the people around you or whatever. All of my failures and tendencies are good or bad. God is saying you need to take a break right now. You need to rest in 2018 or the rest of this year. Eat, get rejuvenated, love people around you, gather your family, your team, recover, rest, because the road ahead is too much for you. You can't do the future with the habits of the past. You need a new revelation. You need brand new strength that comes from me. The angel of the Lord there in my life now represents the Holy Spirit. God is telling me loudly and clearly that I need to rely on him for the strength of the future, not on my 3 and my Enneagram and blah, blah, blah. And so that really has helped me. And I love how Elijah, then it says that he rose. Basically, he obeyed God. He ate, drank, and then he went on the strength of those couple meals for the next 40 days. And if you know anything about the Bible, the number 40 is a powerful number. It's usually the number of wilderness, of bridge. It's kind of that season where you have to go through before you enter the promised land. Israel was in the desert for 40 years. So, and finally they enter the promised land. So it wasn't as if he got up to go to Hawaii or go on a vacation. He got up from his depression and his near-death experience to endure 40 days of wilderness so that he had the strength. And then after those 40 days, he was able to find victory once again. Same thing with Jesus. Jesus was baptized in the Holy Spirit. His father said, I am pleased. And then the devil took him into the wilderness for 40 days. And he also had a near-death experience. He could have honored Satan or bowed down to Satan, thrown himself off that mountain, etc. And yet Jesus resisted that temptation for 40 days. And after that, his ministry started with power and with authority. And so in my life, I feel like that is exactly what God is telling me. And my mom, I've been texting with her and she's been telling me the same thing, that this is a time to let people go, those that have left, to just give them over to God. And like she says, they will miss out on their victory to come. And then to build with the people that I do have now, my family, my wife, our team, the people that support the cause that we believe in. And then to keep walking through the wilderness I don't feel like next month or even next year I'm going to see all these amazing land of milk and honey. I am convinced that the next 12 months are going to be, quote, the 40 years or the 40 days of continuing to walk in the wilderness, but now in the power and in the strength of the angel of God or of the Holy Spirit, not in my own strength or just in our own strength. And so I am ready for that. I am eager for that. And this passage, as I said, has been very, very helpful. Now, what are some of the practical things that I want to give you maybe as tips to maybe to consider? Well, one is to use the story of Elijah. Something that I've been doing myself is to basically write out my own Elijah story. So I want to give that to you as a tip. Maybe if you're dealing with similar things, or maybe you can relate to what I'm saying, maybe something you can do is just to write your own Elijah story. And here's what I mean. 3 things. First of all, what is the lie that you're believing? Elijah believed the lie of Jezebel, that I'm going to come and get you. I'm going to kill you. He believed the lie. He swallowed it, hook, line, and sinker. What's the lie that you're believing? Number 2, how are you acting out? For Elijah, he wanted to die. He was triggered, as we call it in counseling, by this lie. And then his acting out was depression, was wanting to be dead, wanting to just give up. And how are you acting out when you get triggered, when someone either says something negative or there's no justice in your life, or you feel like you're missing out on all the fun? How do you act out? Is it alcoholism? Is it pornography? Is it anger? Is it a lust? Is it eating? How do you act out? Because that's very important to realize, so that you can then control that and stop that, and you can give that to the Lord, or talk to your family or to a therapist about the acting out. And then third, what is the voice of God in your life saying? What is the angel of the Lord telling you to do? Is it rest? Is it to see someone? Is it to take a step back? For me, God is always telling me to not act out in performing more or in looking for affirmation from all the wrong places. God always tells me, David, just be calm. Just stay in your center. Just don't overspeak. Don't overtalk. Don't overshare. Don't overfeel. And maybe for you, that might be it. Or maybe it's something else. But the voice of God has to be very clear. And it usually is, but sometimes it gets drowned out by all of our symptoms. When I began to experience all these lower abdomen aches, I couldn't hear God, because I was just thinking of all the horrible things that were going to happen to me, and this, and I'm going to die young, and my dad, and all these things. I just began to go into this horrible place. And when you're giving in to your symptoms, or to your acting out, your anger, your resentment, maybe your fear, then it's hard to hear the voice of God. But God's voice is always near. So maybe you can just quiet yourself today, this week, and just say, Lord, what are you telling me? I know what my symptoms are telling me, or what my fear or my anger is telling me, but what are you saying? And so that's very important. Another thing that has helped me along the lines of hearing God is my mom, of course, and my wife. I always tell my wife everything, and she knows exactly what to tell me. First, she hears me, then she gives me boundaries. She says, don't do that, don't say that. And, maybe other husbands would hate that, but I welcome that because of who I am. I need boundaries. And then my mom is another kind of another boundary person in my life. I love boundary people. Now, you're not that, okay? So I'm just talking about my wife and my mom. I only allow 1 or 2 boundary people in my life. I don't need 50 or even 5. But my mom also gave me some boundaries. She said, do this, do that, stop doing this, and just walked me through kind of a plan of attack so that I can figure this out. And it really helped me. And I believe that because of those 2, certainly the 2 of them, but even what God was saying through them to me yesterday and today, that's why I even have the strength to record this podcast, and I actually feel, as I said, better. Now, what are some practical things that I've been doing? Well, I have a few things that I've been just doing to just stay focused. Number 1 is to delete my Facebook and Instagram and Snapchat. I basically deleted all of my social media accounts. And that wasn't really a decision based on anxiety or depression. That was more a decision based on these studies that I have been doing on the brain and how these social platforms basically are toying and messing with our brains. And of course, Rochelle, my wife, has been telling me this for years. And I have been overdoing it on Facebook for years now. And I finally, through, as I said, this one show that I watched on the brain and how it's affected by social media, it finally all just made sense to me, and I have felt great. Another thing that I am doing / committing to is eating 3 times a day. I mean, I've been skipping meals, eating only once a day, not eating at 3 p.m. and then at 11:30. I haven't really gained a bunch of weight, but I definitely have felt lethargic. And the depression, of course, or eating badly only makes the depression worse. And so I've also been committing to sleeping, going to bed at 10, because what I've been doing is, because of my all this mess of feelings and thoughts, I've been going to bed at 2 a.m. or 3 or 5 a.m. even, working on beats, and I love, meaning hip hop beats. I have all this gear and keyboards and computers. And even though music is a great outlet for me, but it became too much. I was overdoing it. I was beginning to feel insecure, like my beats aren't that good. And anyway, all the mess of social media again was kind of getting in there. I was putting things on SoundCloud, and I thought, wait a minute, I'm falling into the same habits again. So I've been going to bed at 10 the last few nights, and I can't wait to go work out again. I was really into it a month ago, then I injured myself, blah, blah, but I can't wait to go back into the gym. Number 4 is to just not overachieve. Everything in me wants to get through this by overachieving or by oversharing, by overfeeling. Those are my 2 habits, my acting out, and neither of them help at all. And so I am committing, this is October, for the rest of this year to not overachieve. I had a class in seminary that I was enrolled in. I actually enrolled in 2 classes, again, overachiever, because I'm, 4 classes, 5 classes away from finishing my master's. And heck, it's been 20 years, so I want to finish this darn thing, right? But when this depression hit, everything in me wanted to just keep going and fail the classes and waste $3,000? No, instead I just did the right thing. I did the boundary thing, and I dropped the class before it was too late, and all is well, and I feel awesome. Yeah, I feel guilty. Yeah, I feel shame, but I had a good mentor of mine say to me, Trig, what's the rush? Why are you rushing? Just take your time. And so I thank God for that input. And so anyway, so I've been stopping the overachieving or the oversharing, and even in this podcast, I'm being very conscious of just keeping things as real but sober, in a sober way as possible, as to really let God be the one who leads me into this next season. I think the worst thing, at least for me, that I can do is to try to just rush through this by just, okay, I'm better, let me go back into my craziness. Instead, I am convinced that God is saying to me, like he said to Elijah, son, eat, go to bed, get up again, eat again, go to bed, because the road ahead is too much for you. And then, like Elijah, I want to get up after resting. And I think that this year, November, December, are going to be my months of rest. No overachieving, no new ideas, no over anything. And then 2019, I'm convinced that those are going to be my 40 days of continuing to work hard, see very little fruit, but to continue to be faithful as I walk through the desert of next year, but with the hand of the Lord leading, the angel of the Lord leading my life and the life of my team, my church, and of course my wife and our children. And that's the best thing to do. So I hope that some of these thoughts have helped you. As I said, I'm not a therapist, nor am I here giving you advice on how to fix your life. I don't know your situation. I hope that these things, if anything, can be just stored in your phone or your computer so that when you are at a place similar to mine, you can go back and listen. That's what I've done. I have this other friend of mine, Sean West, and I admire him. He's a young man in Texas who has this great business, and he's an artist, musician. He's a great guy. And then just recently, last month, he put out a podcast very similar to this about depression. At the time, I wasn't there. I just wasn't feeling that. But guess what? The last 2-3 weeks, I've been listening to it almost every week. And so I hope that maybe these words and this episode can be of help to you at some point along your journey, or maybe to someone that you love, someone that you care for. Maybe it gives you perspective on how to help someone that is going through something like this. You might just maybe connect the dots and say, oh, okay, that's what that person is going through. But I think, like with anything, the most effective way to process content is to really apply it to your own life. It's to be the change. It's to be someone who is willing to put your sword down, your anger down, your happiness, your wanting to have excitement, to put down your control or your desire to always be loved, and to lay that down at the feet of Jesus and to say, Lord, lead me, Lord. I don't want to be in charge anymore. I don't want to be driving the car. I want you to be driving the car of my life for this year, for next year. And then to trust that in His time, He will give you the crown of glory, that in His purpose, in His time, in His way, He will give you the victory. And I believe that He will do that in my life, in the life of our church. I am convinced without a doubt that He will give us the victory. But it's going to have to be Him through us, not me in charge. And the same thing applies to you. It's going to have to be Him guiding and directing your life, Him ministering to you, Him telling you, I am with you. I will never leave you nor forsake you. So thank you guys for listening. Make sure that you share, subscribe, like, comment on this episode, and share this with your friends. Thank you again for listening. I don't know when I'm going to do another podcast. It might be tomorrow. It might be, I don't know. It just depends on kind of how, what my achieving is. If it's motivating this, then I don't want to overachieve. And maybe it's best that I do this. I don't know. Just when the time is right. So until next time, thank you again, and I will see you soon.
Thank you for listening to The David Trigg Show. Find the complete archive at davidtrig.com or subscribe for free through the podcast app on iTunes or Stitcher on Android. Each week, we bring you a message of joy, success, and personal power in spite of fear, anxiety, and depression. Because as we like to say, though there's pain in the night, GOZO comes in the morning.